Welcome to Strip Coverlet, where we squeeze the bigger picture out of literature I'm majoring for, and we're here for the wrap-up for the month of January, and it looks like I did not get the total 21, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28 productive videos in a 31-day month. 31 days in January, and here we are with 28 productive videos. We're going to start with the poetry discussions. From Sylvia Plath, we had The Shrike, Alicante Lullaby, Dream with Clam Diggers, Wreath for a Bridal, and Epitaph for Fire and Flower. Now, if you are unfamiliar with what I'm doing there, poem by poem read along for Sylvia Plath. Sylvia Plath is a poet whose worth I could recognize, but could not understand. So I've decided to just go poem by poem through her collected poems and make a video for each poem along the way. This was an interesting collection of those poems. Alicante Lullaby, I thought was a very well done poem. It is one that I think you have to take a step back from. I think that if you just read it straight through and accept it at face value, it's a poem that might be entertaining. If you take a step back, there's a couple things going on there that I think you can really appreciate on a readership level for the craft that it takes not only to write a poem like that, but the craft that it takes as a reader to read a poem like that. The value in Alicante Lullaby is not the value that appears on the page, at least not as far as I am concerned. I thought that, and anytime you can write a poem like that, it becomes something that is almost ephemeral. A poem that has to be appreciated for things that do not take place on the page is a poem that builds the reader, but it's also a poem that threatens to lose the reader if you don't make that connection. And we're not all in great places every time we read a poem. I say that it's ephemeral because poems like that are often read and we don't take anything from them. Then we read them again and we get them. We get it. We understand what's going on there. And then we read them a third time and I remember liking this poem, but I don't remember why. So I thought I think that that's a really good poem that is, I hate to sound condescending here. I hate to sound as if I am turning my nose up at other types of poetry, but I think that this is a poem that is better the more practiced you are at reading poetry. And that's difficult, right? And that seems to be a whole lot of the allure to Sylvia Plath. Dream with Clam Diggers was a poem Dream with Clam Diggers is a poem that I think is more on the page than is Alicante Lullaby. But it's also one that I think the author paints a picture on the page, but the picture itself is not on the page, right? In the same way that if you were looking at a painting of these things, the words would not be on the page. If you're looking at this story being told, the picture that is going on does not happen on the page. So you have to follow it very carefully. So 5 poems out of the 21 poetry discussions were from Sylvia Plath. I skipped. Where is she? Where am I at here? There we go. This, Away Melancholy. I'm going to skip Emily Dickinson and Charles Bukowski for now. This was a poem suggested by none other than ChatGPT, Away Melancholy. It was okay. I don't know that I will necessarily go to ChatGPT for poetry suggestions in the future. So if you have poetry discussion suggestions, be sure to leave them in the comments, because I think that might be more fruitful than getting them from ChatGPT. I wouldn't consider it a waste of time. Stevie Smith was certainly a poet of whom I had never heard. Away Melancholy, a poem of which I had never heard. So I am glad that I got the experience, but it was okay. So Charles Bukowski, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of these 21 poetry discussions are from Charles Bukowski. As the Sparrow, Come On In, Help Wanted, The Shoelace, The Secret of My Success, The Night I Was Going to Die, The Lucky Ones, The Tragedy of the Leaves, and Cut While Shaving. Of this group, I think The Night I Was Going to Die is probably my favorite. It is a poem. Oh, I've ruined all of that. It is a poem that I thought was, again, almost like Alicante Lullaby. A lot about the things which, no, probably more like Dream with Clamdiggers. These things happen on the page, but you have to extrapolate, right? He's talking about the night he was going to die. He does not say why he was going to die. So we get to extrapolate a little bit about Bukowski from that. And I really thought that was probably the pick of the litter as far as these poems are concerned. Emily Dickinson, the poems that we have from Emily Dickinson, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 poems from Emily Dickinson. The Saddest Noise, the Sweetest Noise, I Cannot Live With You, Some Keep the Sabbath, The Martyr Poets Did Not Tell, The Loneliness One Dare Not Sound, 'Tis Good, the Looking Back on Grief. Favorite of that group, maybe because I am not quite so familiar with it, is I Cannot Live With You. I thought that was a really good poem. Emily Dickinson has... What are you doing, Microsoft Word? Emily Dickinson has a way of taking opening lines and making them something in the poem. Microsoft Word is awful. What are you doing? Anyway, doesn't matter. Screw it. Emily Dickinson has a way with opening lines for sure. A lot of Emily Dickinson poems, if you are not reading super carefully, will lose you right around the 1/4 of the way through mark. So a lot of the poems that you have heard of, a lot of the poems with which you are familiar, Because I Could Not Stop for Death, these poems that give us a bit of a narrative are the only way those ones will lose you are because of word choice. Sometimes Emily Dickinson does choose some rather esoteric vocabulary. But what I don't understand about Emily Dickinson sometimes, probably there's a lot of things, but the thing that irks me the most, Because I Could Not Stop for Death. What a wonderfully sort of explicit poem on the page. It just flows right through, right? You get to read the entire story as it happens. And then there are poems from Emily Dickinson that, yeah, those first couple lines are really good. Some of the best opening lines in all of literature you get from Emily Dickinson. But somewhere in the fourth or fifth line, the entire narrative will hinge upon some weird, weird twist of things that if you're not following it super close, you're just lost. I think that the pick of the litter this month for me, I think, would be I Cannot Live With You. So, short stories. We had 3 short stories, 2 from Hemingway, 1 from James Joyce. The 3-Day Blow, which is a short story from Ernest Hemingway, for which I have more appreciation every time I read it. It is a short story that is very easy to chalk up to being slice of life. It is a short story that is very easy to overlook in the canon that is the Finkovisia edition by Ernest Hemingway. By the way, if you've somehow gotten to this point in the video and you don't know that I'm doing this on the channel, I am doing a short story by short story read through of Ernest Hemingway. The 3-Day Blow is a short story from Ernest Hemingway that it seems, and I'm just putting this together sort of in the meta, but I believe the 3-Day Blow is a short story that was much more appreciated by a previous generation. I did not have to read this in any of my classes. I was not taught this in any of my classes. I do not remember a single mention of this, either from professor or peer, through all of college, through all of my master's degree. I do not remember a single mention of the 3-Day Blow. But if you go into older short story compilations, you pick up Greatest American Short Stories, like not the series, the Best American Short Stories. I mean like a compilation book that was put together in like the 50s or the 60s. A lot of times the 3-Day Blow is in there. If there's an entry from Hemingway, it might be the 3-Day Blow. I don't know why. Well, yes, I do. Yes, I do. It's the feminist revolution. That short story, I do not believe is misogynist, but there is a conversation between the two characters that is certainly not all that kind to women. It is not necessarily endorsed by the author. I just made that connection while filming this, that I think that's why that short story stopped being in compilations after, say, I don't know, 1960. That's funny to me. The Dead by James Joyce was the final video for the read-along of Dubliners by James Joyce. Golly, that was a long short story. Golly, I think it was kind of boring. The Dead is oftentimes credited for being the best short story in that compilation. You ask a lot of people, you look around online, you find an article of someone talking about Dubliners, the short story compilation, or the short story collection. They will say The Dead is sort of the crowning achievement of Dubliners. I don't believe so. Counterparts is really good from Dubliners. There's a couple stories that are really good from Dubliners. Araby, which is probably the widest anthologized short story from that collection. But yeah, in fact, I think I would put The Dead. I think there's 15 short stories in that collection. I would probably put The Dead at 13 or so. I do not like that short story. Very long, very drawn out. Some good characters, but like it's very troubling to get there because like Boxcar Race, At the Races, the one about race cars. That one was super jarring because of all the characters that get thrown at you real quick. The Dead is sort of like that as well. But then those characters go away, and you're stuck with less compelling characters maybe through the rest of the short story. But The Battler by Ernest Hemingway, we did a video for that one. Decent short story. Let's see if I have do I have the notes for it right here. There are a whole lot of short stories in the Finkovisia edition that are so a lot of Ernest Hemingway short stories were about Nick Adams. This is one that in its absence I really enjoy. This is one that I will sit down and I'll get a hankering to read some Hemingway and I'll think, what's that one? And then I can never name it. I can never name it. I really enjoy the characters and their dynamics here. The problem I have with The Battler when I am not reading the short story, or when I am reading the short story, I guess I should say, is that I kind of don't care about Nick Adams in that story. I like the other guys. Give me that story. And we start with Nick Adams, we end with Nick Adams, and he's the least compelling part of it. Now, it's short story, but I wish the other guys had a little bit more real estate there. As far as novel read-alongs are concerned, we got through just 2 chapters, or 4 chapters, I guess, 2 episodes, of Holly by Stephen King. The rest of Holly is coming, I promise. Like I said in the TBR yesterday, if you were here for that, I got sick. I was sick in November. I was sick in December. I've been sick twice in January. Hopefully, that is not a sign. Fibonacci numbers that I'll be sick 3 times in February. 1, 1, 2, 3, 5. If I'm sick 5 times in March, there will be no more channel. But I really don't like Holly. I really don't like it. It's so bad. The whole thing is so bad. I'm tentatively scripting a video called Stephen King Has Fallen. Holly's so bad. It's you could, if you were to give a not generous reading to any Stephen King, you could really make the case that it's cheap B horror movie stuff, right? If you gave a non-generous reading to The Shining, which I think is a really good book, to It, which I think has a whole lot of really good parts. If you were to give a non-generous reading to, and they made cheap B movies from these things, right? So that's no surprise. Holly is cheap B movie, it's schlock. Pillar to post, start to finish, schlock. Opening paragraphs. I posted the 15 minutes with the opening paragraphs of Flowers for Algernon, one of my all-time favorite books. My original favorite book. When I was in middle school, we had to read the short story in my English class, and I was so in love with it that I got the book. Loved the book. Shortly, fell in love with Michael Crichton. I spent my entire 7th grade year reading Michael Crichton novels. Each one was better than the last. If you've never read Sphere by Michael Crichton, do not watch the movie, get the book. But yeah, Flowers for Algernon, I'm thinking about going back and doing a read-along for it. There's just so much stuff I got to do on the channel. And probably, finally on this channel, what is in my opinion, my humble opinion, the best video I have ever made. The darkest detail as I lay dying. That video, in my opinion, is the ultimate in whatever literary prowess that I have. Whatever type of literary criticism you hope to get from this guy, the climax of that ability is As I Lay Dying, The Darkest Detail. The Darkest Detail is a playlist on the channel, so be sure to go check that out if you have not. There are videos for Edgar Allan Poe, Emily Dickinson, and The Shining by Stephen King in that playlist. The Darkest Poem by Emily Dickinson, The Darkest Poem by Edgar Allan Poe, The Darkest Detail of The Shining, and now The Darkest Detail of As I Lay Dying. And it is a video that I think has some watchability even if you've not read the novel, because of the part of the novel which is necessary. So there is a recap of the novel, and then the part of the novel which is necessary to understand the darkest detail I put on the screen, right? So also, over on my personal channel, I have a read-along series for The Daily Stoic by Ryan Holiday, and a read-along series for The Daily Laws by Robert Greene. There were 3 episodes of both of those series over on my personal channel, a link to which can be found in the description below. Be sure to head over there. I do all sorts of other stuff on that channel: general commentary, nonfiction stuff, philosophy stuff, movie stuff, all of that sort of stuff that I care to comment on, I put on that channel. So that's all I have. If you like or appreciate what I do here, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other literature lovers. And if you find yourself here by chance but not design, consider hitting the subscribe button in order to stick around for more of this type of stuff. And as always, I hope to have you back for the next one.